I definitely didn't expect this, but when I stop and think about it, it actually makes sense. This might be one of the tougher matchups for Chaos Dwarfs against Bretonnia, of course. Given their sort of lack of anti-large, and they don't actually have the greatest anti-cavalry tools, it could be an interesting matchup. But today, real quick before we get started, we've got Samurai Warrior versus Indie Pride once again. Lord on a Griffin, Royal Pegasus Knights for Samurai Warrior, front line of peasant mobs, some battle pilgrims, and a Grail Relic to help shore up leadership. And we've got some Knights of the Realm, questing knights out on the side there. Over on the near side, hidden in the forest. If I zoom around to it, we've got some more Knights Errant here, Damsel of Heavens. Yeah, 3 Knights Errant, so more of a flanking attack force. Thing about Chaos Dwarfs is, I mean, these guys right here, the Bull Centaurs with great weapons, one of the best anti-large options, only have 50 armor, 36 melee defense, which in my mind makes them very vulnerable to even something like Knights of the Realm en masse. As an archers, they just, I mean, they're going to struggle against the tools that Bretonnia would bring to counter them. And the Chaos Dwarfs don't have a lot of anti-large outside of it. I mean, certainly got like the Infernal Ironsworn with the Fireglaves, I think are maybe going to be the best unit in this matchup. Samurai Warrior does have a Field Trebuchet to counterfire them, and in general, I think that the Chaos Dwarfs will be somewhat vulnerable to counterfire. We'll talk more about that in later replays, but Indie Pride coming in here, Jatan the Black, and no caster, once again, which is certainly questionable. He's got 3 Chaos Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, 2 of those Bull Centaurs with great weapons, and some Goblin Laborers, along with 2 Bull Centaur Tauruks. This is the great weapon champion hero of the Bull Centaurs. Unfortunately, we don't get a Legendary Lord or any kind of Lord choice for the Bull Centaurs, which is definitely unfortunate in my mind, because they're very cool, but Samurai Warrior is going to get aggressive here since he has a very strong numbers advantage, almost not quite 2-to-1, but has very significant numbers advantage. Just going to run the peasant mobs, and I mean, this is the matchup we all really want to see, right? Is peasant mobs versus goblin laborers. So come on, do it. Yes, do it. Oh, there's some in the distance. Let's zoom over to these guys, because they're actually getting it going. The Regiment of Renown, Iron Demon here also is firing its missile weapon, this Demon's Tongue. Really should be engaging in melee, though. I mean, it could have terrified away those peasant mobs already. Instead, the Pride is choosing to try and shoot, which, given it's a direct fire missile weapon, it suffers still from the line of sight issues that all direct fire missiles suffer from, so it's more or less not going to do anything. Meanwhile, over here, we'll get a big cavalry engagement. Bretonnia charging in. Questing Knights, of course, with their armor piercing, going to be very strong in this matchup. Equally, the anti-large, again, to deal with the Bull Centaurs' potential light cavalry of the Hobgoblins as well in this matchup. I would definitely take the Hobgoblin cavalry, especially the skirmish cavalry, just to kind of give some mobile support. But it's going to go very roughly for the Chaos Dwarfs here, as Bretonnia just has a huge numbers advantage. And one thing about Bull Centaurs, like all monstrous cavalry, they're vulnerable to getting outnumbered by standard cavalry. Like, they really need to get clean 1v1 matchups against lower tier cavalry in order to destroy them effectively enough, I think. I mean, in some replays, I've certainly seen them hold out, and shielded ones with higher melee defense, better defensive stats can hold out longer, obviously, but certainly in a matchup like this, I would say the anti-large great weapons are certainly a great choice. But so far, they don't seem to be wildly effective when crazy outnumbered like this. Just a huge lack of support units in Indie Pride's build here. Yeah, and poor Jatan is getting stuck on the ground, as the Bretonnian cavalry is fast enough to keep him pinned in. Tries to get to the Bull Centaur support. Does eventually reach it. Will it be enough to prevail in this pocket, though, and start to roll up on some other positions? The Tauruks also is an interesting choice, but just concentrating so much power in such a small space against a wide faction like Bretonnia, definitely an issue. So this is a matchup, I think, once people kind of workshop it and figure it out, I think it will be something that Chaos Dwarfs can win, but it's interesting for me. I mean, their artillery is something that needs to be explored as well. Like I said, they're somewhat vulnerable to counterfire, but because Bretonnia doesn't have like a, you know, anti-large type artillery like a cannon, going to be less so. It will be interesting, certainly. We'll look at some other replays certainly in the future that should explore some more Chaos Dwarf builds. But on the surface of it, I would give Bretonnia an advantage, like especially for two players who are, let's say, not as familiar with these factions. Samurai Warrior certainly seems to be, though. I know he actually went on a binge recently of playing Bretonnia, just to kind of workshop them and really get a feel for them. So, yeah, definitely very effective and overall very good build, I would say. Indie Pride, of course, definitely needs a caster, and just, again, nothing pays for itself, so pretty sad day overall for him. But because this one was so short, of course, I've got another human-based replay to show you, so let's get to that. Now we get to see the first instance of the Dreadquake mortar, and it just fired off a shot, so let's track that and see where it lands real quick before we get into this battle, because... oh yes, but unfortunately for the Chaos Dwarfs, this is in fact Estalia, gentlemen, and Balthazar Gelt is here with his rocket batteries to take on the Chaos Dwarfs. This one is, again, from Great Book of Grudges and Colonel Commanders. Great Book of Grudges coming in hot with Balthazar Gelt and a beautiful Empire kind of pike and shot style build with some halberdiers and spears up front. It's got some crossbowmen and some handgunners, the rockets as well. And yeah, that's basically it. Some Empire Knights over on this left flank to help give some mobility for the Chaos Dwarfs. Colonel Commanders, again, went very narrow and tall. He's got the Skullcracker, which you will see in this replay. You're probably not going to see it a ton in multiplayer unless it gets some changes, because it has more or less the same stats as the Iron Demon. The only thing it does differently is that it doesn't have a missile attack, costs more, and can attack walls, which is completely useless in most multiplayer. So hopefully they give it like some enhanced melee stats or something to, you know, differentiate it from the Iron Demon. But the Dreadquake mortar, of course, can be attached to either one of them to give it extra mobility and give you a delicious armored train of doom. The other two single entity artillery pieces, I think, are intended to be towed. Currently, it's not implemented. Hopefully, Creative Assembly can figure that out, because it would definitely be awesome to get like the Magma Cannon, the Death Shrieker rocket to also be towable artillery pieces. Definitely make them more unique, and I think just better overall. But anyway, we've got Drazoath the Ashen here, a Lamasu, kind of anti-magic monster. It's interesting, although not sure how useful this is going to be, because Chaos Dwarfs don't have a lot of physical resistance anyway, so negating magical weapons doesn't give you a lot of benefit, but it does have a couple of bound spells. Overall, decent monster, kind of comparable to a Manticore in stats. Not a lot of HP, which is definitely a downside for how much you're paying for it. It is quite a bit more than a Manticore, but Bull Centaur Tauruk. Let's get things underway here as the rockets rain down. I'll be honest, this one's mostly for me, because... yeah, it's a beautiful replay, certainly. I do want to showcase it, since these guys took their time to play it for me. And because, I mean, who doesn't love some Welcome to Estalia Gentlemen rockets? Certainly the Chaos Dwarfs deserve it, and it is interesting that the Chaos Dwarfs reflect, in many factions' views, sort of the worst possible iteration. I mean, obviously the raw Chaos is still probably the worst in reality, but certainly, like for Bretonnia, thinking that, you know, that missile weapons are unchivalrous and their whole kind of society and culture, and obviously, like, not to even mention Wood Elves and others, the Dwarfs themselves. Anyway, there's a lot of factions that have a lot of reasons to hate the Chaos Dwarfs, but despite the fact it's taking a lot of damage, this Dreadquake mortar is also dishing it. It's already got almost 200 kills, despite the short duration of the battle so far. This is one reason why, even though it's insanely expensive to attach it to one of the train cars, or one of the engines rather, I think it's definitely good to do so. This thing can then continue fire while it's moving. You can cycle charge with it to a degree. Oh man, gets a shot out on those Empire Knights as they're engaged on the Bull Centaur. Got some sneaky gets out here too to tie down the Empire Knights, keep them from coming to support this main fight. But yeah, the Dreadquake mortar, although it's doing a hilarious amount of damage, the Lamasu comes in here and is able to help Terror out a little bit. So the Chaos Dwarfs do have a little bit of a rush going, but unfortunately, focus fire from the Empire missiles, despite the death raining down on them, is on point, and of course the rockets are continuously returning fire, even actually scoring some hits on the Dreadquake mortar, which is quite impressive given the inaccuracy of that artillery piece. But yeah, Ashy Drazi, as I'm taken to calling him, is going to get chased off here. Balthazar goes for the pursuit. And you know I got to watch Balthazar get the kill if he can. Let's see. We've got the artillery in the background as well, which is always nice to see. Oh, does he get him in the water? Oh, right on the beach. So close to glory. Drazoath definitely deserves to be drowned, but looks like his special mount there does go down in the water. I'm sure that'll quench its flames. Can't imagine what it'll do to the water supply, though. Should probably let these people know that live here. They probably know already, though. Man, that Dreadquake, it's so strong. All over 200 kills now. It's up to 1650 on value, and continuing to climb there. It does have this monstrous impact effect that Queen Bess also has, significantly reducing the speed of any unit it hits, but to be honest, any multi-model unit it hits is going to take absolutely insane damage, and not to mention that, yeah, just overall, the explosion is very large radius, so it's going to be very good against, again, any multi-model units. Will still do some damage to single entities too, it should be said, but anyway. Skullcracker's also continuing to fight here and has been very key in cleaning up a lot of this Empire army. Despite their severe numbers disadvantage, the Chaos Dwarfs actually did a lot better than I was expecting here, I'm going to be honest. Part of that's due to the Dreadquake, which is now getting closed in on by the Empire gun line. Balthazar, those having to contend with the Lamassu. It's an anti-mage monster, so let's see how it does against the best of the Imperial mages. It is not saying a lot, but it is saying something. Unfortunately, the Lamassu really doesn't have that great of attack stats, so even with its relatively low charge bonus for this type of monster as well, it's going to struggle to output a lot of damage. Balthazar is not a complete pushover in terms of melee stats, so anyway, that's going to be the end for the Chaos Dwarfs. Once again, I know, it's 2 losses for the Chaos Dwarfs. I wouldn't take too much away from it, though. This is early access, everyone's still exploring things, and yeah, I mean, it's just all for the fun and showcase of it right now, and to make notes of certain things that we see that are, you know, effective in whatever situations, like certainly the Dreadquake Mortar. Very, very strong. Lamassu, I'm not totally sold on. I think it could be good in some circumstances, but I honestly would like to see that magic kind of negation ability maybe reworked to be something more useful, or else, I don't know. I guess if you're taking... Yeah, we'll talk more about that another time. I don't really want to get too far into it right now. The Skullcracker actually does pay for itself. I mean, the trains, this one is actually 1250, so maybe it didn't quite. But in general, it was pretty close to paying for itself. I would say tactically, the Terror was super important. The Bull Centaur Tark, again, doesn't do a lot, but he doesn't have any single entities to fight here, really, and doesn't seem to be that effective at fighting cavalry, like, especially if he's having to fight an entire unit of cavalry by himself. So, yeah, I'm not sure I'm 100% sold on these guys in cavalry matchups, but we'll see. And then the rest, I mean, the Chaos Dwarf Warriors were able to do a little bit, but overall, pretty much all the damage came from these 2 war machines, which is very interesting, and they did a surprising amount of damage to the army. I mean, looking at some of these Empire units, 0 kills, 0 value, just getting nuked by the Dreadquake on the approach, but some nice rocket play. They didn't have a lot of great targets to shoot at. Most of the value actually comes from the handgunners. But anyway, beautiful replays. Big thanks again to those that sent them to me. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.